So I have Snapseed saved on a screen on my phone's desktop. Just click on Snapseed, and if you don't see an image that you want, just click open. I already had one open. I'm in images and I'm in camera. You can just scroll to one you want to go ahead and edit from your roll. Yeah, I think I'll do this one. So when you open it up, you've got a couple of options. You've got various looks that are basically presets. And the presets are portrait, smooth. I mean, you can play with all of these and see if you see anything that you like. There's a fine art one that takes everything black and white, silhouette. And the silhouette one would be great if you were doing like that double exposure we were talking about, so that it pushes your contrast and the other image that you layer on top can go in. But I'm gonna come away from there for now, and let's just talk about how to edit images. We'll come back to how to do that double exposure technique. Let's just learn how to actually edit it without putting a filter on it. We go to tools, and we can tune image. Tune image is basically our regular settings. We've got brightness at the top of the screen. If we scroll up with our finger by holding on the screen, your options will come up for brightness, contrast, saturation, ambiance, highlights, shadows, and warmth. To actually make an adjustment, like I'm on brightness right now, if I want to make an adjustment, I can slide to the right and it will increase the brightness, or I could slide to the left and it will decrease the brightness. Same rules apply for contrast, saturation. And I'm just going extreme so that you can see what that effect actually, that controller actually does. Highlights, it's going to only affect the highlights within your image. Note though that in this particular setting, we're affecting the entire image. I'm going to show you another one where you can make spot changes. It's pulling up our shadows, which I don't really need. I'm actually pretty fine with the overall look of this image, but if I wasn't, then this is how I would go in and make my adjustments. Super warm, super cool, just by using our slider. So that's how you make your adjustments overall. And then I'm not going to take any of these changes. I'm just going to click out. The next tool, we just talked about tune image, which is overall tuning. I'm going to skip over details and go to curves. Curves basically is the way it's set up in here. It's the overall lights and darks in your image. So I'm in the middle and I'm pulling up the midtones in my image. And if I let it go, it'll stay like that. I can come over here to the left side. The left side contains the darks in the image. And I can bring my darks down. And of course that looks crazy. If you don't want to keep that adjustment, click on the dot and just drag it off. All of this is very much in line with how you would do this in Photoshop. So the techniques apply across platforms, whether you're in Snapseed or if you're in Adobe Photoshop, and I believe Lightroom as well, or Capture One, which is another editing software. If I come over to my darks, I can pull my darks down a little bit. I kind of like a moody photo. That's just me. And then I've pulled everything down. I can come back and put my midtones back to where they were. And so I'll take that adjustment, and to take the adjustment, you click the plus sign. You've also got a couple of presets in here, which looks like those little squares to the right of your check mark. If I click on that, I've got a couple presets where you don't have to fiddle with it. You can just come in and utilize the presets that are in here, which is one of the reasons why I really like Snapseed. There's a lot of flexibility, whether you want to control everything yourself or if you just want to use some settings and experiment. I'm gonna put it back to what it was and just come out, because once again I'm perfectly fine with what I have here. The next tool we're gonna look at, and as we go through these, by all means play with them. It's gonna be the best way for you to see how to actually utilize them. I'm gonna skip over white balance. Most of the time you don't need to change white balance. Well, let's say you did. White balance, undo. If your image was too warm, then I can, too cool, then I can adjust the temperature and warm the image up. Now, me personally, I kind of like that. That's just me, but yeah. If I click, if your image has a bluish tint or a reddish tint, you can control and take that tint out by using your slider. So that's the benefit of the white balance. Usually you're going to run into that if you've got mixed lighting, say fluorescent mixed in with what's the other light? Fluorescent and the one that nobody's using anymore. I can't remember it. Or if you're also mixing in sunlight. All of those lights have different color temperatures. And so you can take and adjust it by using your white balance. I think I'll keep that. Come back to our tools. We've already talked about crop. That's pretty self-explanatory. Rotate if your image is sideways. That's what rotate is for if your image is a little bit crooked. I'm going to skip over the rest. Selective. So selective is how we make targeted adjustments to our image. So for example, if I click on the book, I get this little circle with a B on it. And that lets me know that the brightness is what's going to be adjusted. And to actually utilize that, I can slide my finger to the left and it will take the brightness down in that area. Or I can slide it up and it will increase the brightness in that area. If I slide my finger up on the screen, I will swap to now my contrast adjuster or my saturation or my structure. I think I will adjust the contrast a little bit. Just a little. And slide my finger up. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. I increase the structure. Structure's really pushing the edges of things so that they pop a little bit more. If I also needed to add an adjustment elsewhere, that's us seeing so if you take your two fingers and place it on the screen, it's gonna show you how much of the adjustment is being affected. If I slide out, I'm increasing the area that the adjustment is affecting. If I slide my fingers in, then I decrease the area that the adjustment is being affected on. If I click the plus, so say I want to stay on this image and I want to make further adjustments, I can click the plus sign and come to maybe the eyes. I usually come in and do something with the eyes and just brighten it a little bit. Do a double tap on the screen to zoom in. If I double tap again, I will zoom out. Double tap again. Now I am zoomed in. Now I want to move that adjustment. And as you see, if I put an adjustment marker on, I can move that adjustment marker just by clicking on it and dragging. So I think I'll leave it right there, and then I'm gonna just increase the brightness just a little bit. And like I said, if it's affecting too much, I can take my 2 fingers, like that's doing the whole face, so I can bring that in so that it doesn't affect the entire area. Maybe I just want to brighten only the eyes a little bit and not the rest of the composition. I've got a spot on my nose that's looking really bright, so I'm going to click my plus sign again at the bottom and then come over to the spot on my nose. Yeah, it's not dead on, but let me move it over. And then now I can pull the brightness down on that. I might want to increase the brightness. Let's see. Double tap. Let me see what I've got going on here. The shirt looks a little bright, so I'm going to come over to the shirt and tap. I'm going to double tap so I can zoom in. Hold up. Mind where you double tap, because that's where it's going to zoom in at. Now I'm going to pull the brightness down. Oh, that's better. Definitely better. And let's see if I increase contrast just a tap. And to see how much is being affected, once again, 2 fingers on shows you what's actually being affected, and that's pretty good. Double tap and I will zoom out, and that's how I did my targeted adjustments. I think I'm happy with that. I might increase the, so I think you only get 4 adjustments per edit, and then I would have to come back in if I wanted to do some more and just click on selective adjustment again, and then I could continue editing. Tap out, and we're back to our entire view. Let's go back to our tools. Now I did notice a couple blemishes on my face. If that is also you're a human, then we can do something about those. I'm gonna double tap and just tap on where your blemish is, just a tap, and it will do its best. Like that was too much, to take the blemish out. And it's really that simple. I'll take my edit, come back to my tools. That was our healing tool. We've talked about our select tool. If we want, we can play with these other ones that are at the bottom: vintage, green, retro, grunge, black and white, all noir. All of those are basically filters that you can control. I'm gonna throw a lens blur on here. Lens blur is like one of my favorite things to do. I'm gonna double tap so I can zoom out. And what it does is you can set where the focus is and blur everything out. I mean, literally, it's one thing that I really love to do to my images. I'm using 2 fingers to expand or shrink the area, and I'm just taking the dot and dragging to set where it is. If I want to change the angle, once again, that's 2 fingers on the screen and me sliding. One finger will give me my pop-up for how much blur I have, the transition, and the vignette strength. And the vignette is just, it's darkening the edges. Let's see. That's what it looks like if I pump it all the way up. And then, of course, I could slide it down. And then the transition is how gradually does it change out from being blurry to not blurry. And that's about it on that. That's pretty good. Click on my tools again. I'm trying to think any other tools that I really love. We will get over to double exposure and to the other tools, but I'm gonna pause right there and let you all play with the main tools. Last thing, if you click on one of the filters, I clicked on vintage, you can adjust it same method by sliding left or right. If I slide up, I'll get my saturation, I'll get my style strength. Style strength is pretty much what it sounds like. How strong is that filter being applied? So that's one of the reasons why I really like Snapseed. You can control how strong the filters are instead of you just slapping it on there and being stuck with it. You've got some other ones down here that you can pick from. I clicked on the little squares that are to the left of our check mark, and then we can come down here as well to get to our controllers. And I think that's a little strong. Just a little bit. Okay, I'll take that and I'm gonna pause it and let you all play. So I'm gonna take a photo of this background paper that I'm gonna be using, and I'm just gonna fill the frame. And then I've also got a collage that I made that I'm going to use as a background as well. I've got some decorative paper that I'm going to take a photo of. Of course, you don't have to use everything, but it's nice to have options. I've already got some photos of my book page from Octavia that I can incorporate as well. If you've got something you just want to add in, feel free. Okay guys, we're back in Snapseed and I've just opened up one of the photos I have on my reel. I'm gonna turn it black and white first so that I can have a lot of contrast in the image. And I just click the contrast one. Flip through, see which one you like best. I think I'll stick with that one. Sure. So I'll take that edit and then I'm gonna go to my tools and scroll down to double exposure. Click the plus sign. And you're looking to pull in the image that you want to stack. I've got a couple of papers that I photographed, but you guys have whatever imagery you've chosen to use. And then you're going to go through that little, looks like placard cards, and see which one works best. And that's about it as far as double exposure. Really fun. I can up the contrast on this, or the how strong it comes through by using my slider. And kind of like that. Take the edit. I can also come back and stack another image on top of that. If I click my plus sign, let's see what the flowers look like. I might like it, I might not. It's kind of cool. I can adjust the opacity so that it just comes through a little bit. And I can change to see which one actually works better. I think lighting works best for this one. I'm going to take that edit, and then I'm going to come back to my tools, and I'm going to go to my tune image section, and I'm going to adjust the contrast just by moving my slider. And I think that looks good. Then I can come to my tools and play with some of these filters that are in here and add some color. So that's what we're doing today, guys. Have a good time, experiment. So I'm going to come back in on my double exposure image that I created in Snapseed, and I'm going to add one of the book pages from my Octavia Butler book. And to do that, I'm just going to go back to my double exposure and click the plus sign, and I'm going to scroll down until I get to one of the book page photographs that I have. Too far. Here we are. And so I can rotate that. Oh. It really helps that there's negative space within the photograph so that my face can still show and the text can go on top. I'm going to experiment and see what it looks like if I change the opacity. And I think that works really well. I'm also going to check and see what it looks like if I come back in and change the blend modes. Right now we're on the default. Let's see what lighten, darken. Darken kind of looks cool, but it also took my text away, and I want the text to show. It's too bright. And then overlay. Overlay is somewhat in the middle. Let's see if I make an adjustment to how it comes in. I kind of like overlay, but for me, I lose my face too much. So I'm gonna go back to the default and maybe play with the opacity. Just drop it down a little bit. Everybody's photo is going to be different, so you'll have to play with yours, but that's the gist of it. We're stacking layers individually and playing with the blend modes within Snapseed. If you want a little bit more control, we can then go in to Photoshop Mix. Before I go though, I'm going to go back in and apply another filter, just to see if I can get that to pop a little bit more. Yeah, I like it with the green. The green helps to pick up the colors that were already in my background texture. I can adjust the saturation, and to do that I'm clicking on my slider, and I can make that green pop out way more, which is pretty cool. I can also click and hold and slide up and adjust the vignette strings so that I kind of pop out. I can slide down and I can adjust how strong the filter is. At 0, and then I can raise it up somewhere in the middle. I can also turn the brightness down. So that's how we would do that. I think I kind of like it right there. But I'm going to come into my tools and I'm going to go to selective. I want this area to the left to be brighter. So I'm going to add my brighten and add a plus sign so I can targetly adjust it. If I use 2 fingers, I can reduce the area that's being affected and brighten that whole area up there. I'm going to add another dot and I'm going to brighten it down here, but I'm also going to lower the area that's being affected by that. I'm going to do it up here as well. Hit my plus sign, click, and slide. I think I like that. I don't like this little area down here that looks like it got missed. Slide that over, and I'll just try and even that out a little bit better. Yeah, that's better. I can 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I get to add another dot. Yay. Let's see. I'm going to increase the contrast over here, and to do that, I'm going to slide my finger up and go to contrast and pull that area out a little bit more. And come up here, slide up, and increase my contrast even more. I'm actually going to come back to these other dots, slide my finger up. I want to increase the contrast here as well. And we're doing all of this right now in Snapseed. And we used our double exposure tool, and we stacked 3 images together. One was, we started with that background texture that had areas of white. Then we started with my photograph and we turned it black and white. And then we went in with our texture and put it on top, and then we added our book page from the Octavia Butler book. And then we went in and we have created some targeted adjustments. And that's where we are. I could play with this a little bit more, but that gives you an idea of how you can combine your images together. We can export it. When you go to export, you can select a specific folder to export it to. I can hit share and share it. I like to share things to my Google Drive, and I'm going to put it in my Tokie Studio Google Drive. So we're going to start playing with some apps, and one of the apps that we're going to play with is called Mirror Labs. Mirror Lab is a an app for Android. It's not available for iOS. I'm in my Snapseed folder. I'm going to go to my camera. And I'm going to pull some of the images, or at least one, from my photo shoot that I had. I'm going to pick one that spotlights the objects that I have, but I'm going to play with it. My goal right now isn't necessarily to keep this image the way it is. The great thing about Mirror Lab is it lets you do some really fun and creative things with your photo. They also have presets. So now I'm in water, and I think that looks really cool. I could also come over and I'm just kind of flipping through some of the available presets. I can adjust these and make them targeted. And I can also go in and change what the final product looks like afterwards. So these are more abstract. The first couple of ones, we get to really see what the image was while still playing with it. So it's really based on what you're looking for. These are great for backgrounds, or if you just want to stay in here. And yeah, that looks like a flashback for real. You can just stay in here and experiment with your images from here. It's really straightforward. I'm gonna go back to, let's see. I really thought that water one, now that's pretty cool as well. I think that water one looks really cool. We first started with the preset. Now we can come in and we can play with mirroring. We can play with, I'm not going to keep that change. We can play with how complex, and so that we want to turn it into this abstract pattern, kaleidoscope. It's just really fun. Now some of it does cost a little bit of money, but there's so many functions in here that I've really never felt the need to delve into the paid part. So I'm just going to come out of there. I can go to distort, and I can change where that water bubble is happening. Pretty cool. Went back to our linear ripples. And I'm just kind of flipping through. Like I said, some of them do cost, but not enough where there's so many in here that are free. You really don't need to bother. And just sliding with your fingers on the screen will let you adjust your effect before it takes. I'm gonna come out of there. Square, heart. I just think it's a really fun way to play with and experiment with your images. I'm gonna come out of there. Now I can't say that I'm a fan of this one. I'm gonna come out. Ooh. So that was Mirror Lab. I'm not familiar of one that is similar to it in iOS. But this one is an Android-based app, completely free. Has a lot of functionality, and it's great for creating your backgrounds or just sitting in here and experimenting with your images alone. If you're using it to create backgrounds or additional images, it's great for putting in the completed image into another application and basically playing with layers and combining the images together. Basically stacking your applications to create your final product. So we're going to take our image that we've already edited in Snapseed and we're going to pull it into Adobe Photoshop Mix. It pops up with an ad and we're just going to dismiss that right quick. Bloop. So Adobe Photoshop Mix is just another app for editing, and we've already used Snapseed, and using Mix we're stacking apps to create our final image. I'm going to go and click on devices. I already saved it in my Google Drive. I'm going to download that file and it pops right in on its own layer. I'm going to start adding to that. Click and drag and make that a little bit bigger. If I click on this plus sign, it takes me to where I can pull images from. I originally clicked device, but if I wanted to take a photograph, I could come into and click on camera. If I've got images saved to Creative Cloud, I could pull from there, and any of the other Creative Cloud apps that might be available. But I'm going to click on device. I'm actually going to go to my photos, which is where all of my stuff goes to for backup. And I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to pull in an image from my grandmother's tea set. I'm going to pull in one of the abstracted images, which is where I've just kind of scooted in really close, maybe the circle one. Resize canvas, sure. You don't have to. The next thing I'm gonna pull in, let's see, do I really like, yeah, I could keep that. So I'm gonna keep that. I'm gonna pull in some of that background paper I photographed earlier, just to add some texture. Just click on the plus sign, device, and I can pull in either these. I'll pull the flowers in. Why not? So once I have everything in, you can actually put in more images if you like. Photoshop Mix will let you put in up to 5 layers at a time before you have to save what you've got and then open it back up. Photoshop Mix has crop, adjust, very similar to Snapseed. It just doesn't have as many functions. I can change the temperature being the color and how it's read. I could go cool, I could go warm. I'm gonna pretty much leave it as it is. I like the purple. I can adjust my exposure being how bright or dark. I can also adjust the contrast. And for my sake, I'm going to increase the contrast. It's going to make it easier for me to get rid of the white areas later. And I'm accept those changes. Now, the reason why we came into Photoshop Mix is because Photoshop Mix will let us cut out, and they say cut out, but really what it's doing is creating a mask. And a mask is just where you're hiding pixels or revealing pixels. An image is made up of pixels, and a mask will let you hide some of them or show some of them without actually destroying them. So if I click on an area and drag, well, at this point it's hidden all the other pixels and it only kept those ones. I don't need to be worried about it because if I just invert it, that means it's going to take the opposite. Now I've hidden those pixels that were selected and I have revealed all of the other pixels. I'm going to keep right there at the bottom to the lower left hand side. I have subtract, which will take away pixels, and I also have add. I'm going to put it onto subtract, and I'm going to take out these white pixels that are in between. I'm not so concerned about if I take out too much because I can come back. I can also 2-finger scoot in and just do little, I'm going to put that back, add that back in. And I'm just dragging my finger on the screen, and I have my add button. Now I can take 2 fingers and zoom back out. Oop, move that out my way. Take 2 fingers and zoom back out. And I'm going to continue, put it back to subtract, subtracting those pixels that I no longer need. Now, if I take too much, I can just go back to add and put them back. Not a big deal. I'm going to go back to subtract and take your time. Depending on the complexity of your image or how much you actually want to keep, like you might want to get rid of all of this stuff along the edges. Hold up. I didn't mean to click that. I've got to go back in, cut out, and start over. Invert. Subtract. Say you only wanted to keep 1 flower. You could get rid of all of these other ones. And just keep a few. And all I'm doing is dragging my finger to take away because I have subtract selected. If you take too much, not a big deal. I can put add, click and hit add. And put it back. The actual Photoshop application has masking in it, and of course it's way more precise than this, but you can't beat this for experimenting and having the ability in your phone to play with. Now all of these edges look really rough, and to smooth that out you would go to feather. And all feathering is kind of fading the edges. If you click and hold, you can adjust the amount of the feather. And that's pretty good. And so I think I'll accept those changes. And right now I have my flowers. I can reduce the size of those flowers. Yeah, we get to manipulate all of this. Layers in Photoshop Mixer and in Photoshop act as digital sheets of paper. And so these flowers are on their own layer with no background. The teacup set is on its own layer. And my face is on its own layer. I can move my face up by clicking on the layer and then dragging. And now I've got my face. And I also, once I click, I can then move my flowers around and add them in. Now the flowers clearly are not blending well with the portrait that I have here. That's all right. It's not a big deal. I'm going to actually move. Let's just get rid of some of the stuff we don't need in here. I clicked on my teacup. I'm going to go to cutout. I don't need this background. Oop. Invert. And I'm just going to click and drag. Got to hit subtract first though. Click and drag. And I'm going to get rid of all of this background stuff that I do not need. If I go over a little bit, doesn't matter. I'm close to the edge of my screen, so I'm kind of having to force it a little bit just to get rid of it. I'll put it back momentarily. I'm going to click on add and just carefully come back in there and put the edges back. That looks pretty good. I still would feather this just a little bit, just so I don't have crunchy edges. And like I said, if you click and hold, you can adjust the amount of the feather. That's pretty good. And I will accept those changes and move that layer up higher by clicking and dragging. Boop, bloop. Click. I'm gonna drag that one down. So now I've got this plate over my face. I didn't clean something up well, and the way I know that is I see this little bit of extraness on the side here. I can come in and get rid of that just by going back to my cutout and hitting subtract and taking that little dab away. Boom, gone. Hit OK. We're going to start playing with how the layers interact with each other. I'm going to click on my plate. Click. And we're going to adjust. So we can pinch to make bigger. And I can almost give myself a pair of earrings with that. Kind of works. Click up here to my flowers. But right now, things don't really blend well together. We want everything to blend together. So if we click on looks, hold up, let me come back out of there. If we click on our blend modes, we can make the flowers blend better than what they are right now. And I usually flip through luminosity, difference, and I'm just looking to see which one I like the look of best. I could keep everything black and white. That kind of works. But what if I want to pop a color? Let's see. That works too. Kind of like that. I'm also adjusting how opaque the layer is. That's 100%. If I dial it down, then I'm making that layer more see-through. So I think I like that. I'll click and accept the changes. And then I'm going to come down to my teacup set and play with the blend modes on it as well. I think I want to see what that looks like as black and white. And then adjust the opacity. No, I think I like it strong. Difference. That works for me. Let's see. I'm going to keep what I have. Yep. So if you like what you've made and the combinations, then you can share it out. I'll save it to my gallery. You got to make sure you save in Mixer. If you navigate away from the program and you didn't save, when you try and go back, your stuff might not be there. So do make sure to hit save. That's super important. So this is a file that I've already created. On the bottom layer, I have a sheet of our background paper that I photographed. I'm going to put that back. On the middle bottom layer, I have a photograph of myself. And all I did with that photograph was I went to cut out. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Let me back out. It really does matter in Photoshop and in Mix, in this case, what layer is actually lit up. That bottom layer is still selected. So let me go to that top layer, and it turns blue, so I know it's selected. I went to cut out, and I erased some of the parts that I did not need. So to do that, we can click subtract and drag our finger along those parts that aren't needed. If I hit the plus sign, I can put those areas back. Like that's what I took out. I took out that little corner of background that I didn't need anymore. So if you got background that you don't need anymore, you can take it out. I can round out the hairline a little bit. I was close to the edge. The other thing that you can do is feather your edges. And feathering just kind of fades it out so that you don't have these hard, crunchy edges. But that's the photograph that I was working with. I'm going to click the check mark and accept those changes. I'm going to put it back at the bottom or near the bottom. Then I'm going to come to this next layer. I'm going to move it to the top so you guys can see it. And I went to cut out. And all I did was I hid a whole bunch of the original image. Here, I'll put it back so that you can see. It was another piece of textured paper that I had, but I wound up catching some of the table. And all that did was give me this stripe within the composition. And I kept the stripe because I really did like it. I'm going to take that back out. I'm just clicking and dragging to subtract. And that's how I have that stripe. My edges are feathered so that it fades in. And I also have it set for a blend mode. Let's talk about blend modes. I think we talked about it a little bit already, but if we click on blend modes are how layers interact with one another. If I go to the beginning, this is normal. That's the whole sheet with nothing done to it. At 100% opacity. Opacity is how see-through something is. I could go to darken, multiply, lighten, screen. Oh, now overlay is kind of nice. That's kind of nice. Difference is looking for the difference in color and value. Luminosity, that's too dark. I'm going to go back. I think overlay was pretty cool. Now you can also adjust how strong, or not how strong, how see-through that layer is within here just by adjusting your slider. I think I like it relatively strong. I'm going to click my check mark and accept those changes. That layer was actually here, so I'm going to put it back. And then we're going to go to the next layer. Let's look at the next layer. I'm going to slide that up. And I also used our cutout to keep some of the paper, but to get rid of some of the paper. Same technique where we're hiding pixels and we're keeping some of those pixels revealed. We've got a feathered edge. I'm going to put that back, and that's how we have that pattern on the face. The last thing we've got going on is another pattern paper, and we're just using our cutout to keep some of the pattern paper and to get rid of some of the pattern paper. We're hiding pixels using our add or subtract. If I add, I will add pixels back in. This sheet is not going over the whole paper, digital composition. If I hit subtract, I'll take it back out, feather my edge, feather, take out a little bit more to soften that blend. And then let's see what we have. So that's how I have that top layer in there. None of these are taking up the whole background except for the background. And that's pretty much how I did this composition. This top layer, that was not that color. I did use an adjustment, or excuse me, a look. I'm gonna back out. Just pointing out, you can make adjustments to your images within Photoshop Mix. You can play with the exposure, which is how bright or dark something is. You can play with your temperature. And it works on a slider basis just like the other application, Snapseed, or if we were in Lightroom. You can change the color temperature. I kind of like it warm. Yeah, that might work. You can also adjust your contrast. Okay. And right now, this has a blend mode attached to it, that top layer. That's why even though I turned it gold, and we click on our blend mode, it's on luminosity, which means the colors are pretty much pushed out and the colors underneath are coming through. If I click difference, it gives us a different look. Soft light pretty much throws it all out. But if I didn't have a blend mode, that's what it would look like. Darken. That looks crazy. Like, where's your head? Where's your head? I'm gonna put it back to luminosity. I like that. The other thing we can do is apply a look. Looks are also based on the layer selected. And looks are like our presets. I'll take that one. And that's how we're using Adobe Photoshop Mix. When you're finished, you're gonna want to share it out. I'm gonna actually increase the size of this one a little bit. And move this down, or up, excuse me. Yeah, I like it over the eyes. Looks very mysterious. Yep. I think I'm gonna leave it right there. And then we share it out. To share it out, we click our share button. So by this being a an Adobe product, we can publish to Behance, we can save to our Creative Cloud library if you have one, or you can save it to Lightroom. I'm just gonna save it to my gallery. And that's about it.